Hello everyone, good evening. I'm Shreya Dhondial. 2 years after the abrogation of Article 370 that pushed the Kashmir Valley into lockdown mode, there has been a U-turn. You can even call it a new turn. The road ahead is long, but the turn is in the right direction. For the first time after 2 years of bitterness and a complete communication breakdown, leaders from Kashmir have today met Prime Minister Narendra Modi. The meeting came after the Prime Minister extended an invitation to all stakeholders in Jammu and Kashmir. It went on for 3.5 hours, obviously, because there were 14 leaders from Jammu and Kashmir who were present and everyone got a chance to speak. Prime Minister Modi made the closing remarks. He said, not just Delhi ki duri, but Dil ki duri also needs to be removed between Delhi and Srinagar. There was a consensus on early delimitation and elections, but the demand for restoration of Article 370 and 35A was politely shot down by the Prime Minister.
Over 2 years since the abrogation of Article 370, Prime Minister Modi's mega outreach to the parties of Jammu and Kashmir culminated today in a critical meeting at 7 Lok Kalyan Marg. Prime Minister Modi chaired the meeting for over 3 hours as the centre frames the road to statehood, making it clear that Article 370 will not be restored. Sources say it was an open discussion around building a better future for Jammu and Kashmir. The main focus was to strengthen the democratic process. The Prime Minister stressed on holding assembly elections, just like the successful DDC polls. There was consensus on conducting the assembly polls after delimitation. The Home Minister said a panel will be formed to release political prisoners.
जम्मू कश्मीर में ऑल राउंड विकास हो, हर इलाके, हर समुदाय तक विकास पहुँचे, इसके लिए साझेदारी हो और जन भागीदारी का एक माहौल बनाया रखा जाए। प्रधानमंत्री जी ने कहा कि जम्मू कश्मीर में लोकतांत्रिक प्रक्रिया से जुड़े अगले महत्वपूर्ण कदम यानी विधानसभा चुनाव की तरफ हमें मिलकर जाना है।
देखिए, अनेक विषय उस बैठक के अंदर चर्चा में आए, लेकिन माननीय प्रधानमंत्री जी ने खुले मन से कहा कि हम जम्मू कश्मीर की देशभक्त जनता के साथ हैं और जम्मू कश्मीर के विकास के लिए, भलाई के लिए हर वो कार्य करेंगे जो हमको करना चाहिए।
आश्वासन यही दिया गया है कि दिस इज द रोड मैप टुवर्ड्स गोइंग टुवर्ड्स द इलेक्शन, डिलिमिटेशन कंप्लीट हो जाए, इलेक्शन हो जाए।
The Prime Minister also laid out the centre's report card in Jammu and Kashmir, stressing on maintaining the Vikas drive. The Prime Minister said it was the collective duty of all parties to protect the younger generation. It is essential to give them opportunities as they will shape Jammu and Kashmir. The Prime Minister said that people must experience corruption-free governance as good governance creates more hope and aspiration. The Prime Minister stressed that an atmosphere of safety and security needs to be ensured for all sections of society. He also said that he wants to remove Delhi ki duri as well as Dil ki duri.
मैंने जम्मू कश्मीर के हवाले से बात की। जो जम्मू कश्मीर के लोग इस वक्त कई तरह की मुसीबतें सह रहे हैं, बहुत मुश्किल में हैं, बहुत तकलीफ में है। जम्मू कश्मीर के लोग 2019 5 अगस्त के बाद गुस्से में हैं, नाराज हैं, जज्बाती तौर टूट गए हैं, बड़ा ह्यूमिलिएटेड फील करते हैं।
और क्योंकि इस मीटिंग में कोई एजेंडा नहीं था, तो खुल के हमने अपनी बातें सामने रखी। हमने तो अपनी पार्टी की तरफ से वज़ीर आज़म साहब को और सबको कहा कि जहाँ तक 5 अगस्त 2019 का फैसला है या जो किया गया, हम उसके साथ नहीं हैं।
However, the Valley parties were not convinced. It's a long road to statehood, but the centre has made the first move for consensus, calling on all parties for a common agenda in the post-370 era to empower the people of Jammu and Kashmir, but the political divide persists. Bureau Report, CNN News 18.
I'm going straight across to General Syed Atta Hasnain, someone who understands Kashmir very well, who served there, who writes extensively about it. General Hasnain, the meeting has ended. Would you say the outcome has been expected?
Thank you, Shreya, for having me on this program. A very, very important day in the history of the country. Post 5th August 2019, particularly, this is one of the very, very significant days. Frankly saying, I did not expect any outcomes from this meeting. I thought this meeting will be only testing of the waters. What I did know and what the way I treated this meeting was that there were 14 Indian politicians meeting their Prime Minister, meeting their Home Minister, putting across their points of view, a discussion would ensue, and at the end of the day, they would agree to meet again. But it seems that the outcome has been a little beyond that. Mehbooba Mufti ji has been very transparent in speaking her mind out to the Prime Minister. The fact that she could do that in a meeting like this, and everyone else has also put across their points of view. Obviously, the political color which was missing, the political narrative, the political domain which was missing from the post-5th of August narratives, decisions, the manner in which the court discourse was going, that seems to have come back. Because everyone knows that it was politics which was missing.
Yeah.
If politics had to return in a democratic environment such as this, with the Prime Minister and the Home Minister completely on board, I think that's the best thing which can happen to India. That's the best thing which can happen to Jammu and Kashmir.
And hopefully things will only get better from here. General Hasnain, I think the one line that is going to be quoted in tomorrow's newspapers, and for the right reasons, is the Prime Minister's statement, where he has said, "Sirf dilli ki duri nahi, dil ki duri ko bhi khatam karna hai." And that really is the crux of the matter, that Kashmir feels alienated from India. There is anger in Kashmir. That anger has to be cooled down, and that duri has to be bridged.
See, Shreya, the Prime Minister's statement is very apt. He's known always to have these kind of credos, very catchy credos, which he puts out like this to the public. I read it from two angles. In the sense, both the statement itself has actually got two messages within it. This aspect of dil ki duri. Yes, dil ki duri has been very, very much existent. And all of us in the military in particularly have been making these efforts to, reach out, winning hearts and minds programs and things like that, which has always been there. But the very important thing is to be able to come into sync together mentally and by the heart, to understand and be that you are a part of the same nation, pursuing the same ideology that the nation is pursuing. Now, that kind of a thing is very difficult in the face of the fact that Pakistan is all the time trying its own narratives in Kashmir, changing of ideology, changing of faith and religious ideology and things like that. It's been a big challenge for the country over the last 30 years. I think things are changing, and this message from the Prime Minister definitely is a message to everyone that you don't have to now pursue and coerce the Kashmiri at all. The Kashmiri must feel comfortable, he must feel a part of India, and he must feel that everything Indian is his. The other part of the message is the aspect of Delhi, the distance from Delhi to Srinagar. Now, this is a different thing. This is the whole domain of administration, concern, security, all kinds of things. At the end of the day, you need whoever is going to govern in Srinagar. Democratically, at the end of the day, there's going to be a government there when the assembly is elected finally. Whoever is sitting in and governing in Delhi have to be in sync with each other.
Okay.
They have to be in sync with each other at all times. That will ensure that the distance between Delhi and Srinagar is reduced, and Kashmir never feels that it is a different part. It's something completely different from it.
Okay. General Hasnain, always good to have you on the show and get your perspective. Now, how did this historic term come in the tumultuous relationship between Srinagar and Delhi? Well, a lot of hard work went into getting the Gupkar Alliance on board. The NSA, Ajit Doval, was involved, tempers were cooled down, and by the end of it all, everyone knew that this was the only way forward for Kashmir and its politicians. August 5th, 2019.
जम्मू और कश्मीर पुनर्गठन विधेयक 2019 को सदन के सम्मुख विचार के लिए संदर्भित करने पर जम्मू कश्मीर पुनर्गठन विधेयक 19 को स्वीकार करने का विचार व्यक्त करती है.
Home Minister Amit Shah ends the suspense and announces the end of Kashmir's special status in Parliament. The state would now be a union territory, and Ladakh would no longer be part of it. Before the shock could settle in, Lok Sabha MPs were in for another surprise.
Farooq Abdullah, I don't know where he is, whether he is in house arrest or arrested.
The MP from Srinagar, Farooq Abdullah, was missing.
बहुत सारे सदस्य कह रहे हैं फारूक साहब नहीं है, इसका दुख है, नहीं है. फारूक साहब है और अपने घर में है, स्वतंत्र है. वो यहाँ आना नहीं चाहते तो मैं जबरदस्ती नहीं ला सकता. ना हिरासत में है, ना नजरबंद है, ना कुछ है. फारूक साहब अपने घर में है.
The truth unfolded soon enough. 3 former chief ministers, Farooq Abdullah, Mehbooba Mufti and Omar Abdullah, were all detained in Srinagar under the Public Safety Act. Days turned into weeks and weeks turned into months before they were released. There was seething anger in the valley.
There is a big lock, if you can see. Okay. I forced myself out to talk to you, to tell you that the Home Ministry is lying in the Parliament, that I am not house arrested, that I am sitting in the house inside of my own will. You think I will stay inside my house of my own will while my state is being burnt?
ये आप देखते हैं शहरी आजादी को क्या हो गया. I have decided to go to the court. सुप्रीम कोर्ट के सामने झूठ बोला जाता है.
मुझे निकलने नहीं दिया जा रहा कहीं नहीं. यहाँ पे ये नॉर्मल सी है. This is the normal. They're manhandling me. They're manhandling me now. They're manhandling me. देख लीजिए इनको. मिल गया ना आपको?
The acrimony appeared permanent. Mehbooba Mufti even threatened to disrespect the national flag.
जिस वक्त हमारा ये झंडा वापस आएगा हम उस झंडे को भी उठा लेंगे, मगर जब तक हमारा अपना झंडा डाकुओं ने डाके में ले लिया है तब तक हम किसी और झंडे को हाथ में नहीं उठाएंगे.
The BJP hit back.
He claims to be the so-called mainstream politician of India, and on the other hand he has reservations in carrying the tricolor, which happens to be the national flag of India. The so-called political parties, the so-called political leaders of Kashmir, they sometimes tend to be even more dangerous than the apparently identified separatist groups and separatist leaders.
Out of detention, the National Conference and the PDP forgot their political differences and came together as the Gupkar Alliance. This to wage a joint battle against the centre. The union government questioned the alliance. Amit Shah called them the Gupkar gang, seeking to deny them any political legitimacy.
इस अलायंस में एक पार्टी कह रही है कि हम चीन के साथ मिलकर के आर्टिकल 370 वापस लाएंगे. चीन की सहायता से किस प्रकार अनुच्छेद 370 वापस आए, ये गुपकर है या गुप्तचर है?
From the Gupkar gang to an honoured guest on the talk table has taken a fair amount of work. NSA Ajit Doval worked behind the scenes. Political prisoners were released, including Mehbooba Mufti's own uncle. It was conveyed to parties in Kashmir that the delimitation exercise would not be unfair to them and that geographical boundaries would not change. Also, it was made clear to all parties that the sovereign commitment to restore statehood for Jammu and Kashmir would be kept.
शासन प्रशासन की सारी व्यवस्था जनहित कार्यों को तेजी से आगे बढ़ाएगी, तो मैं नहीं मानता कि केंद्र शासित प्रदेश यूनियन टेरिटरी की व्यवस्था जम्मू कश्मीर के अंदर चलाए रखने की जरूरत पड़ेगी.
But in politics, they say there are no permanent friends or enemies. And at Delhi's Lok Kalyan Marg, that date is coming true 22 months after Kashmir's fate changed. So what's new now? The centre has offered an olive branch. Leaders like Omar and Farooq Abdullah and Mehbooba Mufti have accepted it. Will they now collaborate to ensure tourists return to the valley, that development happens, that law and order situation improves? Will Kashmir become the paradise that it once was? The world is watching. In New Delhi, Arunima.
Now, one of the stated aims of the abrogation of Article 370 was to improve the security situation in Jammu and Kashmir and bring down terrorism. 2 years down the line, has that happened? The answer is an emphatic yes. It is an image that was once regularly beamed out of the valley. Youngsters with their mouths covered attacking security forces with stones, especially around encounter sites. Each year saw 1,500 such instances. But of late, such videos from the valley have been far and few in between. In 2019, the year of the abrogation, 2,000 stone pelting incidents were reported. A year later, it was down to 300. Yes, COVID may have had a role in it as well, but what worked was a crackdown on money laundering that financed these outings. Terror activity is down as well in the Kashmir Valley by almost 60%. Data from the Home Ministry shows that in 2018, when Jammu and Kashmir was a full state, 614 terror incidents were reported. In 2019, that number came down to 594, and in 2020, the year after the abrogation, it was down to 244. This year, only 43 incidents have been reported so far.
आज की तारीख में जो एक वायलेंस के पैरामीटर्स होते हैं वो तकरीबन 50% से कम हो रहे हैं। जो हमारे देश के दुश्मन हैं, कश्मीर के दुश्मन हैं, पीस, स्टेबिलिटी और डेवलपमेंट को देख के इतने परेशान हैं कि सड़क चलते हुए किसी एक दुकानदार को गोली मार देते हैं, घर के अंदर गए हुए अपने किसी दोस्त से मिलने वाले किसी पॉलिटिशियन को पीछे से गोली मार देते हैं, ताकि ये जो एक डर का माहौल है वो कश्मीर में कायम हो रहे और इनकी जो दुकान है वो चलती रहे।
Lieutenant General Pandey, the GOC of the 15 Corps based in Srinagar, is referring to the killing of Inspector Parvez Ahmad Dar 2 days ago. He was on his way to the mosque. In Pulwama, BJP leader Rakesh Pandita was killed by terrorists earlier this month. But the armed forces have had big successes as well. 445 terrorists were neutralized post the abrogation. The biggest amongst them, Riaz Naiku of the Hizbul Mujahideen. Appealing to terrorists to surrender at encounter sites is yielding results. 15 have surrendered this year. Terror recruitments have shown a downward trend as well. In 2018, 201 young men had joined terror ranks. It fell to 140 in 2019. It rose to 167 in 2020. And this year, so far, only 40 have picked the gun. According to security forces, there are 200 active militants operating in the valley as of now. Meanwhile, the guns have fallen silent at the LOC after both India and Pakistan recommitted themselves to the 2003 ceasefire on February 25th. It came at the back of record ceasefire violations by Pakistan. 3,400 in 2019, half of which came immediately after the revocation of Article 370. In 2020, the number rose to an astounding 5,133. Pakistan was clearly jittery. Back-channel talks mediated by the UAE saw the NSA Ajit Doval fly down to Dubai on at least 3 occasions. The result was a surprise ceasefire announcement that has held good for the last 4 months now. In New Delhi, I'm Shreya Dhondial. Article 370 was a 65-year-old legacy that crumbled within a matter of hours. It came after the BJP walked out of its alliance with the PDP and brought the Mehbooba Mufti-led government down. There was shock and awe in the valley, but in hindsight, the BJP had always been very open about its intentions. Scrapping Article 370, after all, was the dream of its founding father, Shyama Prasad Mukherjee. It was even in their manifesto.
of August 2019, a little past 11 a.m., the future of Jammu and Kashmir, and indeed that of India, is altered forever.
मैं मानता हूं कि जम्मू कश्मीर में एक लंबे रक्तपात भरे युग का अंत धारा 370 के समाप्त होने से बनेगा.
Close to 2 years later, a lot of water has flown under the zero bridge of Srinagar. The valley is now looking forward to its future, but there's no erasing the memories of the shock and awe that followed this momentous announcement.
Black day in the constitutional history of India. They have not simply got rid of Article 370. They have dismembered the state of Jammu and Kashmir.
PDP MPs on the floor of the House made their objection to the decision clear in some objectionable ways.
हम हिंदुस्तान के संविधान की रक्षा के लिए अपने जान की बाजी लगा देंगे.
But besides Kashmiri leaders, there was widespread political acceptance of possibly the most important move on the floor of parliament in recent times.
हा खरंच एक ऐतिहासिक दिवस आहे आणि इतके वर्ष जे स्वप्न सगळ्यांचंच आणि ते आज पूर्ण झालेलं आहे.
But in hindsight, the stunned indignation that followed the government's surgical strike on Kashmir's special status was misplaced, given that the BJP had always declared that the abrogation of Article 370 was its core election promise. And with the Kashmir Assembly having been dissolved after the ruling BJP-PDP alliance crumbled, the centre took advantage of an ingenious loophole in the rule book. The will of the then governor, who was administering the state, was seen as the will of the state government. And so, a 65-year-old legacy crumbled in a matter of hours.
श्यामा प्रसाद मुखर्जी जम्मू कश्मीर भारत का अभिन्न अंग बने, धारा 370 समाप्त हो, 35A निरस्त हो, इसके लिए उन्होंने उस समय आंदोलन चलाया था.
Ritangshu Bhattacharya for CNN News 18.
On that note, a very quick break. Up next on Debrief, the phase of reconciliation has started in Jammu and Kashmir. Up next, we are seeing if today's meeting will resurrect Kashmir's tourism sector that has been down in the dumps for the last 2 years. It's been a double whammy for them. That story up next. Do stay with us. Welcome back. 2020 was a cruel year for the entire world, but doubly so for the Kashmir Valley. 2019 saw a lockdown because of the abrogation of Article 370, and then in 2020, COVID hit. The result, the tourism industry, the mainstay of Kashmir's economy, virtually died. But plans are in place for the overall development of Kashmir. What is it? Take a look.
For a state whose economy relies extensively on tourism, Jammu and Kashmir has seen some dark days. The business community of Jammu and Kashmir just can't seem to catch a break. The Kashmir Chamber of Commerce and Industries has pegged the losses in the last 2 years to the tune of 50,000 crores. The double whammy has rendered at least 5 lakh people jobless, according to the chamber.
We in Kashmir, we are facing third year continuously, and this is our third lockdown which we faced. Our economy is in bad shape since decades. So somehow we are managing. We have to see the revival measures now. Time is there that we should think about how businesses can be revived.
Towards the end of 2019 and the beginning of 2020, business started picking up as restrictions were lifted. But the pandemic dealt a blow to the economy as curbs were clamped to control the raging virus. Also hit was the valley's famed tourism industry. The shutdown post-August 2019 kept away tourists for a long period of time. Though tourists returned in thousands this January and February after COVID restrictions were eased, the second wave in March sent them packing once again, affecting livelihood of lakhs of people.
370 से पूरा ही काम ही खत्म हो गया यहाँ पे. वो पूरा 3 ही साल खराब हो गया. अभी थोड़ा कोरोना काम हो गया, इसकी वजह से अभी थोड़ा सा टूरिस्ट आने लगा है. नहीं तो यहाँ पर कश्मीरी काम अभी थोड़ा है. टूरिस्ट अभी तो है नहीं, अभी 2-4 दिन से टूरिस्ट आने लगा है.
Due to non-availability of the internet since August 2019, online businesses came to a standstill. 4G services required for smooth online transactions were restored in the region only in February this year. Several incidents of killing of Apple traders in the region in October 2019 further worsened business sentiments. In their desperate attempt to spread unrest and attack Kashmir's economy, militants started targeting migrant labourers and Apple traders who were doing businesses during the shutdown. But the centre, through a slew of measures, wants to ensure that development of the region does not lag behind the rest of the country. The Narendra Modi government approved a new industrial development scheme for Jammu and Kashmir in January this year. The scheme is approved with a total outlay of 28,400 crores to boost industrial activity, while nurturing existing industries as well. By attracting more and more investment in the region, the scheme has the potential to give direct and indirect employment to about 4.5 lakh people. Other measures include creating a land bank of 29,030 canals to set up industrial estates, 456 MOUs worth 23,000 crores signed with potential investors, all-weather connectivity to the valley including trains and tunnels, the new wool processing, handicrafts and handloom policy of 2020, and issuing GI tags to at least 9 indigenous products from the region. It remains to be seen how these measures will help turn around the economy and make Kashmir a paradise for investors and tourists again in a post-pandemic world. With Nivedita Singh, Anisya Kumar for CNN News 18.
After a historic meet today, hope floats in Kashmir and the Kashmir Valley. With that, it's a wrap from me. Thanks very much for watching.